Right now, you are warm. You probably do not even notice it, but you are. Somewhere in your home, a small thermostat watches the temperature. When the air gets cold, a machine switches on. It solves the problem before your body can complain. You leave a heated house and enter a heated car. Then you move into another heated building. Your exposure to the cold lasts only a few seconds. Winter is now a minor inconvenience. You scrape frost from a windshield. You grab a thicker coat. You complain that the sun disappears too early. But winter once meant something completely different. For nearly all human history, winter was deadly. It attacked from 4 directions. The cold could kill you. Hunger could kill you. Wild animals could kill you. And the endless darkness could break your mind. There were no furnaces, grocery stores, or sealed homes. How did people survive winter at all? Because somehow they did. Your ancestors entered some of Earth's harshest environments, and they came out alive. How they succeeded was an extraordinary human achievement. Begin with the obvious enemy. The cold here is a fact that surprises most people. The human body is a tropical machine. We evolved in the warm regions of Africa. Without protection, humans lose quickly in freezing conditions. Hypothermia can begin within hours. Your fingers stop working. Your thoughts become painfully slow. Then your internal temperature falls dangerously low. Eventually, everything shuts down. We have no claws or thick protective fur. We have almost no natural insulation. We seem terribly designed for surviving brutal winters. And yet, humans marched directly into the cold. They entered Ice Age Europe and Siberia. They reached places no bare human could tolerate. So how did they manage it? The first answer was fire. But fire had a serious flaw. It warmed only the side, facing the flames. It could not travel with you. Leave the fire and the cold immediately returns. Fire alone was never going to be enough. People needed to carry warmth around their bodies. That need produced a revolutionary technology: clothing. At first, people draped animal hides over themselves, but a loose hide left openings everywhere. Wind entered from the sides. Arms remained exposed. The hide slipped whenever the wearer moved. It was better than nothing, but better than nothing could still get you killed. The real breakthrough was fitted, sewn clothing. People cut hides into carefully shaped sections. Then they stitched those sections together. Sleeves covered the arms. Closed seams blocked the wind. Warm air remained trapped against the skin. It stayed there even while people moved. That separated a blanket from a real coat. But there was a catch. Fitted clothing required a needle with an eye. This tiny object was difficult to create. Bone had to be ground into a fine point. Then a tiny opening had to be drilled. It had to be delicate but strong. Researchers have found needles over 40,000 years old. Some may be even older. These were not crude objects created accidentally. They were precise tools built with clear intention. The thread also came from the animal sinew was removed, dried and used for stitching. Fur was positioned inward against the body. Together, these created a private bubble of warmth. Humans could finally endure air cold enough to kill. Sewn clothing was not a luxury. It allowed humans to leave warm Africa. It opened the coldest regions of the planet. Without needles, humans could not survive Siberian winters. Now you can move work and hunt. But daylight is disappearing. The temperature continues falling, and a coat cannot solve the next problem. Where will you survive the night? A cave seems like the answer. Caves block wind and keep out snow. They also maintain a relatively stable temperature. But caves have a problem. They are rare. A dry, defensible cave was extremely valuable. Other groups probably wanted it too. People could not depend on finding one. They had to build their own shelters. And this is where survival became extraordinary. At Mezhyrich in modern-day Ukraine, archaeologists found dwellings. They were built roughly 15,000 years ago. The landscape offered almost no timber or stone, so people used another abundant material: mammoth bones. They interlocked bones into circular, dome-shaped structures. A single dwelling contained hundreds of bones. Jawbones were layered like shingles. Massive tusks curved above the entrances. These were not desperate, temporary shelters. They were carefully engineered winter homes. Building them required planning and cooperation. Inside, everything was designed to trap warmth. Even the floors were lined. In South Africa, researchers discovered ancient plant bedding. It dates back approximately 77,000 years. Humans created comfortable shelters long before leaving Africa, but northern winter demanded even greater protection. Mammoth bones did not fit together perfectly. Every gap created an entrance for the wind. People sealed those gaps, layer by layer. They covered walls and openings with animal hides. They stacked turf against the outer walls. Some even packed snow around their shelters. Why would anyone cover a home with snow? Because thick snow is an excellent insulator. It traps pockets of air, and trapped air holds heat. Slowly, the wind lost every entrance. The shelter became a complete survival system. It kept people alive through deadly nights. But a sealed shelter created another problem, a serious one. A winter-long fire required enormous amounts of fuel. Someone repeatedly had to enter the cold. The group became bound. To its shelter, food had to be nearby or stored. That leads to the third threat, hunger. Modern life has erased true winter hunger. In winter, the land stops producing food. Plants become dormant, berries disappear, roots become trapped beneath frozen ground, animals migrate, hide, or become desperately thin. The earth itself seems to stop feeding you. Suddenly, survival becomes an arithmetic problem. Warm months must provide enough for winter. Ancient people mastered food storage and preservation. The first method was drying. They sliced meat into thin pieces, then dried it in sunlight or smoke. Removing moisture prevented rapid decay. Smoke added another layer of preservation. Properly dried meat remained edible for months. An autumn drying rack was survival insurance. The second method turned winter into a tool. Frozen ground became a natural freezer. People dug storage pits into permafrost. They filled those pits with meat. Cold kept the food edible for months. Winter was trying to starve them. Yet winter also preserved their food. But the most valuable food was not meat. It was fat. Staying warm consumes enormous amounts of energy. Lean meat was not enough. Fat was the densest available energy source. People rendered it into a storable substance. They combined fat with dried meat. The result was a dense, portable ration. It delivered enormous energy in small amounts. During winter, every calorie mattered. Fat could decide who reached spring. Now you are warm and sheltered. You have stored enough food to survive. You have defeated 3 of winter's weapons. But the 4th does not attack the body. It attacks the mind, darkness. Farther north, winter days become painfully short. The nights become brutally long. You may receive only a few daylight hours. Then come 15 or 16 hours of darkness. Travel becomes dangerous. Hunting becomes nearly impossible. You remain confined inside a tiny shelter. The same people surround you every night. That constant waiting can break the human mind. What did ancient people do with those hours? They did not simply tolerate them, they filled them. Every indoor task moved beside the fire. People repaired damaged tools. They shaped fresh spear points. They mended winter clothing. They twisted plant fibers into cord. They carved useful objects. The long night was not wasted time. It was workshop time. The group prepared for the weather to break. But those nights held more than labor. People gathered closely around the fire. They talked. They sang. They performed rituals. Elders taught everything they knew. Young people listened and remembered. Stories were repeated night after night. They carried knowledge across generations. Myths, songs, and traditions grew in darkness. Much of human culture formed under these conditions. In 2014, Polly Wiesner studied Juhwansi conversations. She discovered that conversation changed after dark. Practical discussions gave way to stories. Stories led to songs and rituals. Firelight changed what people were willing to share. They pressed together against the darkness. They kept one another warm. They kept one another sane. They kept one another human until sunrise. Winter did not merely test the mind, it helped build it. Now, step back and see the pattern. Winter was not merely survived. Winter shaped us. Cold inspired, fitted, sewn clothing. Scarce caves inspired real architecture. Seasonal hunger inspired preservation and storage. Long nights became workshops and classrooms. Winter helped create the tools of expansion. Those tools carried humans into to every climate. The harshest season failed to destroy us. Instead, it made us more capable. So here's the complete picture. Winter attacked your ancestors with cold. They answered with fire and fitted clothing. Winter attacked them with deadly nights. They answered by constructing insulated shelters. Some were built from mammoth bones. Winter attacked them with hunger. They answered by drying and freezing food. They rendered fat and stored it. Winter attacked them with darkness. They transformed darkness into workshop time. They transformed firelight into a classroom. That classroom helped create human culture. Every winter was a deadly test. Many people did not survive it. Survival was never guaranteed. It demanded preparation, skill, and cooperation. It also demanded extraordinary stubbornness. And now, look at you. You turn a dial and warmth appears. You open a door and find food. Some of it crossed the planet. You complain that the sun sets early, but you complain from inside a heated home. Your ancestors could never have imagined it. You have never feared the first snowfall. You have never wondered whether food would last. You do not truly survive winter anymore. You barely notice it. Did winter finally become gentler? No. Generations of humans froze and starved. They experimented, failed, learned, and adapted. They huddled together through endless darkness. Slowly, they defeated winter, one invention at a time. They endured everything the season used against them. They did it so successfully that you never would have to.